Welcome to the Beauties podcast, where we talk about everything you need to know about women's sports. From the grassroots to the pros, we got it all. Today on the show, we talk to Hollie Naughton and Sam Cornett from Squash Canada about the Canadian Squash National Championships. Here are your hosts, Addie and Cowie.
We talk a lot on the show of obviously sports and, you know, all the things that we watch on a daily basis. And I'm pretty jacked about this one because this is a sport and this is something that's going to happen today where we got to talk to some incredible people in a world that we really knew nothing about and learned a ton about squash.
Squash, man. It's been on my list. We all know, if any of you are avid Beauties listeners, you heard me rave about squash. I was an instant fan. It's solidified my fandom getting to talk to Hollie Naughton and Sam Cornett today on the show.
Yeah.
Because both incredible human beings, both incredible athletes with a resume longer than mine will ever be in this lifetime. Mm-hmm. And representing a sport that really has been underrepresented, and I'm so grateful that we got an opportunity to talk to them and shine a little bit of a light.
Yeah, and show the world of it, which I thought was super important, to show the world, like, from Hollie's perspective of where she's talking to us from where she is, like, and then Sam, who has lived this incredible life of squash and is like, you know what? I'm going to do it on the back end of things now, and I'm going to double down on everything, right? So it's a growing sport. It's exciting that they were able to come on to the show and talk with us about this incredible event that's coming up in Vancouver, that if you're in the area, you must go to. Today was awesome.
Yeah, I think we need to give one more plug here. If you are in Vancouver, or if you're in driving distance of Vancouver, do it for me, if no one else, because I'm very envious of the fact that you have an opportunity to watch the Canadian Squash Nationals that are being held in Vancouver June 1st to 5th. So this comes out on Tuesday the 31st. Tomorrow you have an opportunity, and tomorrow is a free day. Mm-hmm. So you can go and become a fan of squash, learn about squash, talk to people from Squash BC, learn about what's available locally, talk to people from Squash Canada, all of those good things. We will be watching from our houses here in Manitoba through their incredible live streams on CBC Gem.
Yeah, I was just going to say, and it's... The live stream is worth it. The live stream is worth it to go see. And just, if you're not a squash fan, if there's anything, go watch for, first and foremost, the athleticism of these incredible athletes. But secondly, the glass courts. You will be absolutely blown away at how amazing those glass courts are.
Couldn't agree more. I was.
Yeah, that's right. So we, once again, incredibly thankful to both Hollie and Sam for coming on today, and we really hope you all enjoy our interviews with these incredible beauties. 17th world ranked, number 1 Canadian ranked professional squash player, Hollie Naughton. Welcome to the Beauty Sports Desk. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Awesome. And just so for our listeners know where you are right now, could you just kind of give a little description of where you are currently sitting?
I'm just sitting at a villa in El Gouna in Egypt.
You win. We are hanging out in which just got sun in the last 4 days in Winnipeg, Manitoba, in my glorious basement. I was talking to Hollie before we pressed record today about how her day off, if none of you follow Hollie on Instagram, do that.
Please.
Because her day off was floating in the Red Sea yesterday on a beautiful boat with her friends. So you look like you're living your best life, my friend.
It's been a good day off, and it's been a good few days here training.
Awesome.
Do you want to maybe just describe a little bit of what your day off looked like?
So a few of the other players from the PSA Tour have been here training for the last week in between the World Championships, which took place in Cairo, and the El Gouna Open, which will start in 2 days' time. So we rented a boat and went out into the Red Sea to, they call it an island, but it's just like a bit of an area where the water goes really shallow, and we hung out there and then went to another place to do a bit of snorkeling, and then went back to the shallow bit and hung out there for the rest of the day.
Amazing. Hey, Hollie, I have, so obviously I stumbled across squash mostly on Instagram, quite honestly, and I did rave on the show about how easy squash has made it to be a fan. It's one of the easiest sports, quite honestly, for people who try to watch sports all the time to follow, and there's live streams. But for the people that are listening to the podcast, I think we want to know a little bit more about Hollie Naughton. How did you find squash? Was squash in your family? Like, let's have a little history lesson on how you became a professional squash player.
So I am originally from England, if you can't tell with the messed up accent. I moved to Canada when I was 10. Squash originates from the UK, and I am very lucky that I have a family that is involved in squash. So my mum and dad play, and my aunt also plays, and referees actually at the PSA level. So the squash is very much involved in our family and in our lives. So from a very, very young age, I was at a squash club in England, in Barnsley, of my hometown. And then when I moved to Canada at 10, I really started to pick it up and get more involved in it. In Oakville is where we moved to when I moved to Canada, and now I'm in Mississauga. So it's kind of been a big part of my life for all of it, really. And I decided I wanted to go professional at around 15, 16 years old. And I've been doing that since I graduated high school.
Wow. And did you find the squash culture, like when you moved from England to Canada, was it tough to find a competitive squash league, or was it pretty established when you got here?
So I actually didn't play much squash when I was in the UK. I played football or soccer. I mean, there's a huge league in the UK. My mum played like inter-club and inter-counties, and they also had that in Toronto. So we were very lucky that where we moved to, there was a big squash scene already. And I think it's such a welcoming community. It doesn't matter where you're from or where you go. If you go down to a squash club, everyone welcomes you in like one of their own. And it was a big part of when we moved, getting that friend group. And for me, I started getting more involved in squash and actually enjoying it and wanting to take it a bit more seriously. And that's where I actually made a lot of my friends that I still talk to this day. So it's quite a good community.
That's super cool. So I mean, you're educating us just as much as you're educating everyone else. I keep saying for the listener, and let's be honest, Addie and I are not squash professionals by any stretch. I feel like I learn something new every time I watch a squash match. But can you talk to us just about what it took for you? I mean, you said you made that decision very early, 15, 16, to decide to pursue professional squash. What does that entail? You didn't play, or you did play at a post-secondary level, or you jumped straight after high school into professional squash, and then you've been on this journey to now where you are at 17th ranked in the world?
So it kind of, you go like junior level, and then really there's no in between junior and professional. So I made the junior national team when I was 15, I think. Played my first World Juniors then, so I'd been involved and I'd been playing international tournaments from about then. Played the British Junior Open, the Scottish Junior Open, the Dutch and Pioneer, which is in Germany. So I'd been exposed to a lot of international squash at that point, but there really isn't much of a bridge between a junior level and taking it to the next level, which would be professional. So I took that jump. Like I said, when I graduated high school at 17, I jumped on an airplane and flew to Australia for 2 months to start my professional tour. So it's been quite a journey. I was lucky and fortunate to have, at that point, there was quite a few more professional squash players in Canada at that point. So they kind of took me under the wing and mentored me a bit more. And then now I'm training in England a lot more, just because there's more professional players there and more competition to help
Right.
to the
Progress your
next
game.
level.
Very cool.
And so one thing too that I'm really interested in is just like you were kind of touching on it. It seems as though you travel all the time. And so can you kind of just give us a behind the scenes of what it is to be a professional squash player? Like, are all your tournaments in incredible places like Egypt?
New York
I
City.
wish.
New York. Yeah, New York City.
I know.
Wild.
I wish. Like I said, when I first jumped on an airplane, yes, it was cool to be in Australia, but I was in the middle of nowhere in Australia, on courts that had no heating in the middle of the winter. It was not glamorous, and there's definitely, it is not all like this. Like he's mentioned, New York or here right now is a few of the top events that are in some pretty cool places. I think, like any sport, when you start out, the smaller tournaments tend to be in smaller places, not as well looked after. I mean, I'm very lucky, I think, that I haven't had any horror stories. I've heard a few from some other players of going to some countries and areas that didn't sound very ideal, but
Right.
I think I've been quite lucky overall that the places I've chosen to play have looked after me very well. So I think, there is cool places. I think any sport you're going to find some amazing venues and amazing countries to travel to, but it's not all glamorous.
So on average, how many tournaments or competitions would you say you're involved in yearly?
So I'm probably in a regular season. COVID's changed things up a little bit, but regular season I would play anywhere from about 13 to 15 professional tournaments, and then I would have league matches and playoff weekends, and then also nationals and any other Canadian tournament that I can play with the schedule permitting.
That I can fit into my schedule. That's a good point though. So you're in Alguna right now. The tournament is starting in 2 days, and then you're basically immediately on a plane back here for nationals.
Yes. I mean, I don't know whether to say all being well or not, because if I do well here, then I won't be playing nationals.
Okay, so there we go.
So one of those, a win-win, I guess, situation right now. Like the scheduling has been pretty crazy recently, with just back-to-back tournaments and trying to fit things in and flying back and forth from Europe to the States and back. So like you said, nationals starts June 1st in Vancouver. I am currently in Egypt, so that's a 20-hour plus travel day for me coming up. So hopefully that all goes well, and I'm not too beat up once I get there. So yeah, it's a bit hectic, but it will be my last tournament of the season, and I get a little bit of downtime before the Commonwealth Games, which is taking place in July.
Oh, amazing.
Just a little bit of time.
Yeah.
Just unbelievable. And so I think this was one of the things that when, Cowie first kind of stumbled upon all this squash stuff, is there a symbol to the glass court? Or is that just what you guys play when you're in professional? Because I know the squash courts I've seen.
Yeah, they look, quite honestly, kind of dumpy.
And they ain't nothing like those glass courts. Those are phenomenal. So is that kind of like the graduation from into pro? Or do you only get those at certain tournaments? Or
So the glass courts at the highest level, so it's platinum for us. I think it's actually anywhere from gold level above. It's mandatory that there's a glass court, which is the one that you saw in Calgary that we were playing on. We're very lucky that Squash Canada has a glass court, that they are now touring around Canada and trying to promote squash, which is, it worked because you guys found it.
It did work. That's right.
That's what we're wanting to do. We're trying to, rejuvenate squash a little bit. It's kind of dropped off a little bit over the last few years in Canada. So that's the whole point of this glass court is to try and catch people's attention and really show them that squash is a cool sport, and it can be put up anywhere. So that is why at the big tournaments they do have the glass court, and that is, like you said, kind of the graduation from, instead of just the traditional courts that you've seen that sometimes are not quite taken care of and look a bit dumpish and dark, and the ball marks are all over the walls, and then you get to play on this amazing glass court. That it does actually play very, very different to a regular court. Because it's glass, the way the ball comes off the walls it kind of accentuates the length of the court. The balls stay shorter in the front, so you have to move quicker to pick them up. And on the flip side, it takes a lot more power to get the ball into the back of the corners. So if you're strong and you are at that top level, it's great. But if you're slightly off the ball and you're playing against someone, it doesn't feel great to be on a glass court.
Yeah, well, that's one thing that I noticed, because we had, like, we're kind of debriefing as we're watching, and when I watched that tournament in Calgary and in the finals for you, that was one of the things that the people announcing were saying, is that it's really important to find your length. Mm-hmm. And so that kind of shifts me into a question here of that we were talking about earlier, is you're lefty, right?
Yes.
Is that are you unique in squash? Is there many lefties out there? And does that make it, do you think that's an advantage for you when you're playing opponents that you are left-handed?
There's actually a lot more lefties right now than there ever has been, I think. There's in the top, there's 3 or 4 left-handed women. I definitely think it's an advantage because there's not many of us. We are known to be able to hit a couple shots that right-handed players just can't. I have no idea why, but it just seems to be like that. So I think it is definitely an advantage, and one that hopefully I can
take advantage of.
That's right, because we were looking, we're like, well, that has to be super rare, because I can barely hold a racket in my left hand.
Oh yeah, I can't even cut my chicken with my left hand, barely. So. But I think
it's okay. That's only like me with my right hand. I can't do anything with it.
And I think it is. I find it interesting that it doesn't matter where you look, that when you all of a sudden you shoot against a goalie who catches with the opposite hand, it's like, whoa, that's different.
Yeah, totally.
And so it's regardless of sports. So I think that's really interesting. The other thing that caught me off guard in Calgary was them talking about the elevation. So that's something, as you travel the world, obviously, depending where you're playing, very much dictates how you prepare or plan to play in that location.
Yeah, the altitude, that's can be a tough one, I think. But that's like anything. I mean, cyclists going to different places, they've got to adapt to it. It's just like different courts. Like we said, the glass court plays different to a regular court. So it's just that adapting to the surroundings. Like I said, the glass courts can be put outside, and then you've got the wind element, which is a huge thing here in Alguna. The glass court's outside and it's very, very windy. So it affects the flight path of the ball and how you're going to play on it, because if you're throwing it up in the air, the risk of it flying out. So I think, altitude, yes, is tough to deal with, but it's just going to be a matter of getting there a few days earlier, trying to acclimatise to it the best as you can, and adapting your game like anything.
And so do you get the same type of, when you're going and you're adapting to it, like, do you have practice time in the court prior? Like, do you have to go in and you have your practice schedule, or is it just kind of like, this is the court you're going to be playing on, so make sure you're ready?
No, we get practice. So at the big tournaments, like tomorrow, we get allocated time on the court that you're going to play on. At the big tournaments, unfortunately, when it is on the glass court and there's so many players that are going to play on it, the practice times are like 20-minute slots, so it's not very long. It's very much in and out, trying to acclimatise to the court as best as possible, and then you're into the match and hoping for the best.
That's why, because I thought, I was like, you're all on one court. Like
Yeah, how
that's
do you
got to
share?
be the
That's a
most
good point.
scheduled thing of all time.
Do you
And-
practice solo?
Usually they'll put two of you on, so
Okay.
I mean, some players choose to solo, so you might have half court each. In the later rounds, it's quite funny. We laughed about it in Calgary actually, because the first few rounds, because there's so many players, you get like 20 minutes on the court. And then by the time the later round you get to like semis or finals, you can have as much time as you want. But you're already at that point, you've already figured out the court. You already know how it's played. It's like you need it the flipped way around, but there's no way of doing it. But you need more time to start with to get used to the court, and less time once you're used to it. But there's just not enough hours in the day for it to happen that way. So we do joke about, like, I don't know how it can change, but it's kind of counterproductive, really.
That is so funny. That's so true. By the time you get to the end, you've played on it so much.
You're like, let's just get going.
Totally.
Yeah.
And the other question, just from a preparation standpoint that I was reading up on last night, it said that there's a 4-minute warming up the ball period, that you actually have to warm up the ball with your opponent. So does that happen at every single level before every match?
Yep, it does. So that's just how we start. So you switch sides at 2 minutes, and it should be like 1 or 2 shots to yourself, and then you cross it over. Some people do it differently. Some try to intimidate the other player by stepping up in the court, and kind of trying to look like they're ready and up for it, and then some players will just be a lot more casual and relaxed about it. But yeah, that's just part of squash. So before every match, you've got 2 minutes on one side, the ref will say half time, and you'll switch over, and yeah, that's how we start.
Because I was thinking, so we play a lot of hockey, which I also wanted to see if you played hockey when you moved to Canada, but I couldn't imagine playing pass with the team
Opponent.
the opponent.
No.
Before
You
a
don't
game.
even push their pucks back across the red line.
I'm like, that would be just total warfare for the first 4 minutes of every squash game. I mean, to play with your opponent, that's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's the thing about squash. It's so different to other sports like hockey or tennis. You're constantly changing the ball or the puck or whatever. So whereas squash, it's that one ball. We use that unless it breaks, or we can, on a glass court, you can ask for a new ball after the third game. So every ball bounces different. So you've got to warm up together, because I had 2 minutes on my own on there, it just wouldn't make sense. Whereas like other, like, football or whatever, the ball changes a bit. Whereas squash, it's that one ball, so it's just, I don't know, I've never even thought of it that way, really. I've thought it's a bit strange that you warm up together, but I guess it kind of is when you look at it that way.
Yeah, it is. There was a few things, like, I think the interaction that you have as players, even so. And we can talk about this outside of a podcast someday, but the one thing that I was confused by in some scenarios is when it looks, obviously the referee is the one that makes that call, when it looks like one of you gets in the way of the other person, and then half the time you guys disagree if I actually did get in the way or if I didn't, and obviously the referee is making that call, and then when the match ends, they just leave the court. They just like, yep, here's my however many minutes or seconds that you have, and it is such a uniquely individual, where you're interacting with a referee in a different way, you're interacting with your opponent in a different way, and then at the end, they just all or some people leave their racket and some people don't, and they exit the court, and I don't know what you go do, towel off, hang out, scream a little, whatever it is, and then come back and do it again.
Yeah, I guess it is a bit. Yeah, I think like any sport, you're not going to agree with the ref all the time.
Yeah.
I guess squash tends to have a bit of more communication and back and forth with them. But
The super
I think
nice
it's just
way.
like yeah, we try. Sometimes it doesn't come across in the best way, but we try to stay a bit calm and level-headed with it. Like anything in the heat of the moment, when you're wanting to do well and win, it can sometimes get a little heated on there. But in between games you have 2 minutes. So yeah, you towel off, get some water. We actually, since COVID, there's been, usually if your coach was there, the coach could come and talk to you in between games, but that has stopped during COVID. So for me, I go over a game plan with my coach, so I write it in my little notebook, so I read that in between. And that's kind of what I do in between. When you see us just walk off court and then come back on. We're not just having a good laugh out there and then coming back on focused. We're trying to get back to whatever game plan we're trying to execute on there, try and get it done.
In a non-COVID year, would you have a traveling coach?
Not really. If my coach was close by to where the tournament was, then he would come. But unfortunately, the money in squash, unless you're at the very, very top, doesn't really allow to be paying for someone to come and travel with you and their expenses and everything else. So unfortunately, it's just a when and if kind of situation. So if my coach, he's in upper state New York. I'm working with 2 coaches actually right now, so one in England, and David Palmer's been my coach since I was 17. So, but he's now in, like I said, upper state New York at Cornell University. So if usually like the tournament in New York, he was there and watched my matches, but again, there's no coaching in between, so it's kind of a bit pointless in some ways for them to come, especially when, like you said, everything's streamed, so you can watch my matches online. The streaming quality is very good at the top tournaments, so there's not really much difference apart from if I look out to the court to see his face. That's about it. But I shouldn't really be looking out of the court anyway, so it doesn't make much difference.
So if you were, obviously you said you played football or soccer growing up as well, but if Hollie Naughton is not playing squash, what would you play? Soccer, or is it another racket sport maybe?
I don't know. I like bike riding.
Okay.
I'm not very good at it, but maybe that's something I would get into. I like being outdoors, so I think whatever I would do, which is quite funny since I play an indoor sport and there's very few outdoor courts. So, maybe that's why I would like to be outside, do something. Definitely not running. I am not big into running, so I would avoid
you and me
that.
both, buddy.
Yeah, with ya.
But yeah, maybe I'd always wanted to be a gymnast when I was little, I think, but I mean, there's no way I'm picking gymnastics up at my age, so
if you try it, let us know, we'll come watch.
It'll be entertaining, that's for certain. Maybe bike riding, cycling. I'd probably do a bit of soccer, just to meet another group of friends. I think I'd be up for trying anything, really.
The girl says she doesn't like to run, then says I'd play soccer.
for friends. She's
That's so good.
Yeah, the beauty on the team.
It's kicking a ball. You're chasing a ball. You're not just running in a straight line.
Fair. We'll give that to you then. We'll give it to you.
Yeah.
Or running around a track. I think I have like PTSD when I see a track. Like start hyperventilating and backing away. No chance you'll get me around there.
Oh, too funny.
Oh, that's so good.
I do have a question about the rackets, because I feel as though it's like really your one piece of equipment. And I noticed everybody kind of has their own little thing, and you have a Wilson racket, is that right? So
I do,
is there something specific that you look for in a racket, or the way that they're strung, or anything like that?
I think for me it's the balance and the weight. I don't really like light rackets, and on the flip side I also don't really like really heavy rackets, so I think for me it's that balance of the weight makes a big difference. And then the stringing, once you get the right tension with the string, then it plays so different. If the strings are super loose, then I don't feel like I can place the ball where I want to, and similarly if it's strung really tight, then I'm not a big fan of that. So I think I personally prefer the strings to be a bit tighter than looser, whereas some of the players prefer it the opposite way. But I would say, the balance in the racket.
I love asking questions like that because you get a super detailed, cool answer that I never in a million years would think of. The balance.
Yeah.
Never would have thought of that in a million years.
It's so true, but you think about when we pick a hockey stick or you pick the baseball bat. Yeah, it is. It's personal preference. So I think that's super
And I
cool.
guess, you asked earlier whether I played hockey. I did not play hockey. But I would presume that a hockey stick would be like different bends, I would think.
Yeah, different
Yeah.
curves, different flexes. Yep, you got her.
Yeah, so that would be the same as a racket, really. I mean, some rackets are head heavy, some are handle heavy, some are more equally balanced, some are more flexible frames, and some are more rigid frames. So it is very similar, but just in slightly different ways.
Yeah, that's very true. Very
so
true.
cool. Well, Hollie, you are a rock star. We're so happy that we found you. We're happy that we're connected. Hopefully we can have you back on the show, but if not, someday we're going to come watch some squash and maybe we'll enjoy part of your day off with you and get to hang out. But want to give you an opportunity for one last plug of squash if you want to. And then we'll let you go for the day, or evening for you.
For evening.
Yes, my dinner should be cooked soon. The girls are in the kitchen. I think for anyone watching this, there's quite a lot of squash courts around Canada and all over the world. So it's quite an easy sport to get out on a court. You've got a wall to hit the ball against, so it's a lot easier than trying to pick up another sport where you've got to try and get it in lines and stuff like that. So I think it's a great sport. It keeps you fit and healthy, and it's a great community that's super friendly and welcoming. And I think for anyone looking for a sport to give a go, I'd highly recommend it. We definitely need more women playing, so please get out there and give it a go. And I'm hoping you guys will be on the court soon. If I'm in Winnipeg anytime soon, I will be coming and getting you onto a court.
That's right.
Yeah,
we will be
we need
there.
to record that because that's comedy hour for sure.
There used to be quite a few tournaments actually in Winnipeg. I haven't been back in a few years, but they used to have a fairly big women's tournament.
Out of the Winter Club, was it? Probably?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Makes sense. That
That's
does make sense.
incredible. If you're
They
there,
still
we will
have
be there.
men's tournaments. So the men's tournaments are at the men's club across the road from it.
Yeah, the squash club.
Okay, so if you hear this, Winnipeg, where are you, squash players? Because maybe Addie and I are going to find a racket and dust off some runners.
Here we go.
I don't know.
I feel like we chatted with
guys will
Hollie.
have
We're
the
fine.
hand-eye
Yeah,
coordination.
we've got a professional coach that we can call up now.
My racket's super balanced, so let's get in there.
Anyways, best of luck to you in Alguna. We will be watching and following along. We hope to see you at Nationals, but if you don't, that's also a good circumstance for you. So good luck, and thanks again for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Sam Cornett is joining us now at the Beauties Sports Desk. Welcome, Sam. We are so excited to have you here from Squash Canada. If you could, we know about your whole history of being essentially squash your whole life. If you'd be able to just give us a little bit of background on you, that would be amazing.
Absolutely. So I played professionally for 10 years for Canada and on the PSA World Tour. And then wrapped it up, went to college actually first to study gerontology, and still studying now. And thinking I wanted to work with older adults and also loving sports. I'm between two worlds right now, and I'm very, very happy that in January I started working for Squash Canada, and my role is the events and national teams coordinator.
Wow. That's so fun.
Yeah, so cool. I think that's an interesting mix for you. I mean, I have a soft spot for elderly. I've been fortunate enough in my life that I've had all of my grandparents, and had great grandparents that I still love very much and are doing very healthy actually. But have you mixed this is an outrageously non-squash related question, kind of. Have you mixed squash and your ability or your training and body movement and all these things now in this world that you're studying in?
Yeah, actually, because one of the things that I love about squash, aside from the high performance like competitive aspect, is that you're always moving, and so many people enjoy squash who are not high performance athletes. So the concept of helping people stay moving and active, which I enjoyed while I was competing, that has translated beautifully into what I'm doing now.
Amazing.
Alongside my Squash Canada, yeah.
So cool.
And so you say you with Squash Canada, it's majority working with obviously high performance athletes. Can you just describe a little bit of what that entails? Like, is it just, making sure they're at tournaments, or is it literally training, and what kind of aspects go into your job?
Yeah, so I'm covering not so much the training aspect right now. I imagine we'll try and get into that at some point. But so far, I've been covering there's basically two sides to it. Sending teams to events such as World Championships or Commonwealth Games, or running events, which would be the Canadian Open that you watched, Nationals coming up. You spoke to Hollie about that. So those are the kind of two legs, and then that includes like a ton of like flight bookings and lanyard purchasing, everything in between.
That's so good. So let's pump up the Nationals. You guys did an incredible job at the Canadian Open. That's how we found you. We talked to Hollie about that too. I was an instant big fan. I really appreciate the work that you and Squash Canada have done to make it really accessible for fans and promoting it. So we are super grateful that we found you and excited to have you and Hollie join us on the show. But let's talk about, because I was looking at your Instagram for the Squash Canada Nationals, which for those of you who are listening that don't follow it, do yourself a favor and do that, because it's worth your time. Mm-hmm. Did I read that correctly? 390 participants in Squash Canada Nationals?
Correct.
Across junior, masters, professional, all sorts of abilities, all sorts of ages. On an outdoor court in Vancouver?
Yep. The showcase matches, open matches, and semis and finals of many of the categories are going to be on the glass court, and it's going to be amazing.
Oh my gosh, we need to get on a plane.
We got to get there. That glass court is incredible. Mm-hmm. And it's interesting talking to Hollie about her interpretation of the glass court. Do you remember your transition into that when you were playing? Like the subtle differences of the court compared to, a non-glass court?
Yeah. There's a lot to take in when you transition from playing on panel courts, or, we call them back courts in some events. So transitioning from those backcourts onto the glass comes with a lot. It comes with, feelings of pride and excitement for what, you've earned to be a big moment in your career. And then also, I'm sure Hollie spoke about the complications that it brings too. It's a little harder to see. It takes some getting used to. There's movement around the court. If someone's wearing white and the ball's white, it can be awkward.
I didn't even think of that.
So there's some difficulties, but I personally find that the grandeur of the occasion and the exposure for squash outweighs any of the things that are kind of annoying. Hands
down, because when I have been watching highlights like nobody's business the last little bit, and when you see them playing on a glass court, there is a symbol of like, this is the real deal. Like, this is incredible. It looks amazing. Oh. And it just shows that next level, that there are very distinct tiers within squash.
Yeah. And to me, I think like the accessibility and the portability of that court makes, like, where else can that happen? Name me another thing. It can't. Unless we're playing street hockey, because there's streets everywhere, but that's not a professional sport.
Yeah.
It's incredible.
Yeah.
I'm sure Hollie just told you all about the event that she just participated in, the World Championships in Egypt, and it just shows how beautifully this court can be put anywhere.
Totally.
Oh, totally. And we were also talking about her luxurious day off in the Red Sea as well. Yeah. Just incredible.
Making our lives in Winnipeg look far less glamorous.
Yeah. And so one thing I wanted to talk to you about, Sam, because you went from a very intense professional career to now being on the behind the scenes portion of it. How much of what you went through as a player do you bring into your honest day to day? Like, do you ever think back and go like, I wish I had that when I played, so we're going to do it now?
Yeah. I think that's a big part of it. I'm still learning. I think, what am I, 4 or 5 months in? And I think I'm getting the hang of things. And at the start, I saw the gaps that I wanted to fill, but I didn't have the time to fill them. So I'm hoping that this is just the start of something that I can continue and improve all those little things that, I've noticed. And, it's an opportunity. It's a big opportunity to see where we can take this sport, because, it had its peak way back when, and we'd like to bring it back up to that, if not farther, and make it a more accessible, more household name rather than something that you only see on the odd show or movie.
And I think, and to go back to our conversation about the glass court, I think that is one of the biggest pieces of that.
Oh,
I
yeah.
truly believe that.
Yeah, I agree with you. That's one thing that Hollie had said too. Like, she talked a lot about that she chased you. You were kind of the person that she was aiming to beat. And she talked about, was it Nicole David, yeah. Being this back-to-back-to-back repeat champion. And to me, the unfortunate part of then hearing that from Hollie is that that's the first time I've ever heard of her. And so I think what you guys are doing, back to your point, Addie, of the glass court and this like prestige and the accessibility that you guys are creating within squash, we're certainly on board with making sure that we continue to talk about it, because I think it's something that if more people know about and the accessibility of it, there's no seasonality to squash. You can play it whenever you want to. Is really unique, and from like you talk about body movement, fitness perspective, all of those things, something that can be a lifelong sport that we should promote more.
Yep, it's a pretty great sport. I'm super biased, but I love it so much.
So let's go back a little bit to when you were playing. You trained in the Netherlands for a bit?
Yes, very briefly in Amsterdam. It was amazing.
It's a beautiful city, eh?
And did you go there to train with a specific coach or specific player, or was it just like, I'm going to Amsterdam?
Yeah, so there was a good group of people there, and one, who you now know, is Nicole David. She was there for most of her career, and it was like the proudest moment of my life when she asked me if I'd come train in Amsterdam with her and a couple other people. And then I also got time with her coach, who was incredible, Liz Irving, also a great player, amazing player in her time too. So I got to get an inside look at everything Nicole was doing day in, day out, got to hit with her coach, and also got to bike the streets of Amsterdam between it all, which was pretty cool.
Wow, that's incredible. And I think one of the things that we keep going back to when we, talk to yourself and with Hollie and stuff, what an incredible community squash is. Mm-hmm. Like, it seems, I'm just fascinated by this world.
I know.
Yeah.
And it seems like it's, well, from an outsider perspective looking in, like you guys only pick the coolest places to train.
Coolest places to train, coolest venues to host events.
Totally.
Yeah.
We do our best.
Oh, yeah. We'll pump your tires for you. Don't worry.
That's right.
I know we've only got you for a few minutes today, but can you just give us a plug of, obviously you've put a lot of time and effort into planning the national event, which is coming up. Let's make sure that everyone knows when that is, if you are local to Vancouver, how you find it, and if you're not local like us and still want to follow, how people do that. Yeah, great. So coming up very soon, 1 week out today, or whenever this airs, it's June 1st. June 1st to 5th,
day one is kind of exciting. It's free viewing. So if you come down on June 1st to the glass court at the Vancouver Convention Center, Jackpool Plaza outside, you'll be able to come watch. Every other day there is standing room, but we encourage you to buy some tickets and check it out and have a seat. There will be food for purchase, drinks for purchase around the court at the convention center. It's going to be an event. It's going to be a spectacle. And if you have never played, anyone around can fill you in on opportunities to play nearby in Vancouver and where all the local clubs are. There's going to be representatives from Squash BC, so they can fill you in on local courts, on where to find equipment, maybe even, I know there are some opportunities for new players to get a free package as well, so you can ask them about that. And I mean, it's a pretty ambitious endeavor, so if you want to come see history be made, I suggest you come on down and say hi.
That sounds absolutely incredible. And we talk about this a lot on the show. We are huge supporters of getting out and being a part of the event and buying tickets. Buy tickets. And so if you are not in the Vancouver area, such as us, is it just all on streaming platform?
Yeah, it will all be on CBC Gem. So gem.cbc.ca, and you can search squash. Or if you wanted to check out squash.ca, we'll have a press release coming out in the next few days with all details on where to find draws, where to watch the streaming, like a direct link, so you don't have to search through Gem, although that's more than welcome to cruise through all the sports that are on there. And the streaming has been amazing. I mean, you saw it at the Canadian Open. It's been really, really good. And we're very, very proud of it. I think there will be commentary at this event, and it's going to be a full production, so definitely tune in.
And as you should be super proud of it. Gem is a very easy platform to navigate. I love that you plug other sports because that's what we're all about too. Do not let the fear of trying to navigate that app let you or push you away from trying to follow squash or any of these other broadcasts that go on, because it was extremely easy. It was a good way for me to learn, because the announcers actually gave some kind of tidbits for people like me who don't know squash inside and out. So I'm excited. We will be following, and congratulations on putting on such an event. I know it will go well, and we look forward to following along.
Awesome. Thanks for having me.
You bet. Thank you so much for joining us today. And please, please, please check out this amazing event. So when you think of all the places that you got to go play hockey, and and we talked to Hollie, who's sitting in a villa in Cairo. Well, Elguna. I just can't say that word. Elguna. How do you feel? Where was my villa?
Honestly, what my first reaction was is I picked the wrong sport. Because I wasn't kidding when I said her Instagram makes my life look slightly depressing, or very much less exciting than hers. Yes. Traveling the world, playing a sport she loves, being 17th ranked in the world. She's still young. She still has an incredible career ahead of her. I'm just grateful to have them on, but it did make me a little jealous.
Oh, totally. And so looking at what, the whole Beauty Sports Desk is to get knowledge, information, understanding about what is actually out there for your daughter, and look at that life. Yeah. How incredible is that? So if anything, her coming on, sharing her stories, sharing her life of just incredible determination, drive, wanting to get better, competing at such a high level, traveling the world, meeting these incredible human beings, that's what's available for your daughter in sport. Yeah.
I think that's one thing that we continue to talk about and hope to be able to do and help support our communities and our sports communities in that way, is that we often think of mainstream, right? We think of the WNBA or basketball, soccer, fastball, hockey, football, those kind of quote unquote mainstream, I'm just going to call them phys ed sports, right? They're the ones that you teach in gym class. And what we don't often focus on is a lot of these other individual sports journeys that you can take, whether that be through swimming, track and field, squash, tennis, badminton, all of these different journeys, or underrepresented sports. Like I think rugby is underrepresented.
Yeah.
Volleyball in this country specifically is underrepresented. Mm-hmm. All of those things, you're right. There's a ton of opportunities, and we've talked about it in past episodes, that it really is about finding a pathway and being involved in sport for life. And so hopefully this opens your eyes to what possibilities there are when it comes to squash.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm excited to watch the tournament. I'm excited to follow. But one thing I would definitely encourage everybody to, we're going to be keeping a close eye on it. Please keep a close eye on it, but go follow Hollie, go follow Sam on their Instagrams, and just see this incredible life. Cause it's been a very big eye opener for us, and we're pretty big sports people.
Yeah. You're not wrong, my friend. Not wrong.
So, yeah, what a great episode by Cowie to end her off here. Final words.
Final words, like we've said on every episode, thank you for being here. If this is your 28th episode, thanks for coming back. If you are new here, find us on Instagram and TikTok at Beauty Sports Talk, on Twitter at _Beauty Sports. Make sure you go and follow Squash Canada Nationals, Hollie Naughton, Sam Cornett. Thank you to both of them for being on the show. Thank you for being back. And buddy, thanks for another episode. I enjoyed it.
Oh, it was awesome. Thank you all so much, and we will see you next week.